For the major part of the 19th century, Spanish electoral activities were known by adulteration of elections, such as el pucherazo, a practice used during the Restoration time that allowed the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party to alternate their turn in power. Even the Spanish army became the main political agent of this political corruption by way of military raisings. For this reason, political participation was limited not only for women but also for the female and male segments. However, from its beginnings, feminism was aimed at social demands rather than political claims. Spanish women preferred to achieve civil rights equality instead of the right to vote. Pioneers of the Spanish feminism were Emilia Pardo Bazán, a Galician writer from a noble family, and Concepción Arenal, a Spanish writer with expertise in criminal law. According to Emilia Pardo Bazán, cultural and political improvements attained through the 19th century only achieved the distance between the sexes. In addition, Concepción Arenal defended that there were more roles for women apart from the role of mother and wife. At the end of the 19th century, this condition of mother and wife made more than half of the Spanish women illiterate. Women's education was not significant for the Spanish political system. They had only a role in society based on taking care of their children and husbands. According to the 19th century society, women were born to serve men. Thus, Spanish women had no voice during the 19th until the 20th century, when the female segment finally raised from its ashes. Even in the 20th century, differences between male and female conditions were the order of the day. Spanish women's subordination was usual. In terms of economy, women needed permission from their husbands to transact businesses, sign contracts, or even purchase goods. Even employed women had no right to manage their own salary. Their husband would administrate it, and if they were not married, their fathers would administrate it. Regarding law, judgments for husbands and wives were disparate. For instance, whether the husband committed a crime against his wife or a supposed lover, he would only be exiled from the country, whether worse came to worst. The punishment for wives was much worse. In contrast to the public, it was heavily looked down upon if a woman wasn't faithful to her husband. Society had an important role over women. Females were forced upon a strict conduct code. It was almost impossible for Spanish women to build a future out of the wife and mother concept of woman. Indeed, women who tried to fight against this conception were strongly reprimanded. Back in the early 20th century, feminism pursued rights such as the one related to education or work for women before political equality, unlike most European countries. High-class women were the pioneers of the first feminine organizations. Upper-class women were deeply persuaded by Catholicism. Thus, these feminine organizations against the aim of the feminine suffrage. As a matter of fact, very few members of the parliament endorsed the request of allowing women's voting rights during the electoral reformation period. Spanish feminism development was a slow process. Finally, the feminine socialist group was born in 1912. Among all socialists, Margarita Nelken stands out. This woman is known by speaking about the passivity of the woman who joined the PSOE, the Socialist Party, and the lack of interest with which many affiliates and leaders dealt with the feminine question. Years passed, and Spanish feminism experienced one of its crucial stages when a group of middle-class women created the National Association of Spanish Women in 1918. This group consisted of the wives of professionals, teachers, and university students. Women such as María Espinosa, Benita Asas Manterola, Clara Campoamor, and Victoria Kent. This time, the women's right to vote was requested along with several social demands, salary equality, education for women, and redesign of some of the articles of the Civil Code, in which discrimination was clearly implicated. The National Association of Spanish Women did not even consider a demand for the right to divorce or birth control. This organization aimed for women's rights with independence from political parties. María Lejarga, led the Spanish Women's Union, an organization which appeared also in 1919. It was an association with a more left-wing ideological speech. As a result, the Catholic Church counterattacked by creating the Women Catholic Action in 1919, a group of women who, unwilling to the new vision of women socialist feminists, wanted to spread. From that date, feminine organizations such as Feminine Youth of the University and the Crusade of Spanish Women began to emerge. The Spanish Second Republic, from 1931 to 1933, brought a new legislation reform and, with it, the desired women's right to vote. It goes without saying that the most influential women were followers of the Catholic Church, which made the process far more difficult. For instance, figures such as Margarita Nelken and Victoria Kent rejected the granting of women's suffrage. They thought that women were not prepared to deal with the responsibility that comes with the right to vote, and if they could vote, they should do it in benefit of the conservative parties. On the other hand, Clara Campoamor was a strong defender of the feminine vote. She deeply supported equality in front of the parliament, as well as the necessity of erasing any discrimination based on sex in the legislation. By 1931, women had no right to vote yet, not even priests. Only men over 23 could vote. However, women could be elected into parliament. Victoria Kent, Clara Campoamor, and Margarita Nelken were the only women in parliament among 465 members. Socialists voted for women's right to vote in accordance with their ideological principles, with some relevant exceptions, as Indolecio Prieto, who even stated that women's vote was a tab against the republic. Some small Republican groups and the right-wing parties also voted for women's right to vote. The right-wing parties did not doubt their ideological beliefs, but led by the idea, later proved to be wrong, that women's vote would be massively conservative. The fact that in the 1933 elections, the first one in which women could vote, the parties of the right won made many state the feminine natural tendency towards voting conservative. The 1933 victory of the Popular Front came to deny such ideas. Republican Women's Civil War. The adverse Spanish War and the division of the country in two zones had immediate impact in the situation of the women. The two political models that were fighting the front were mirrored in the two visions of women and their social role. When we think of women in the Civil War, there is an image that comes to our minds: the militia women who mobilized in July 1936 against the military coup d'etat led by Franco. Those on the mobilists, the socialists, communists, and anarchist militias of the first days of war represented the best example of transgression of a historical role to which women had been traditionally relegated. The best example of defiance of women's traditional role was adopting the role of warrior, a historical monopoly of men. The social mobilization of working women was a process that delivered from the Republican period. Workers' trade union had succeeded in enrolling a growing number of women workers. After the first war moments of euphoria and chaos, women's work was redirected towards functions which were more adapted to the classical feminine role. The image of the militia women was substituted by that of the heroine of the real world. In order to substitute the mobilized men, women entered the workforce massively. Paid feminine work increased from 1937, responding to the growing mobilization of male military population. Some women have personified these social changes. The anarchist Federica Montseny, first woman minister in the history of Spain, was the Minister for Health and Social Assistance in the Largo Caballeros government from November 1936 to May 1937. Within this period, some revolutionary measures were adopted. The Catalonian Generalitat passed the legalization of abortion. Another woman who acquired world recognition was Dolores Ibárruri, La Pasionaria. The defense of Madrid allowed her to show her charisma with which she tried to personify the image of the combatant working-class mothers. La Pasionaria as a great leader, the anti-fascist women group, joined together socialist, communist, and republican women. Encarnación Fuyola was its secretary general, and it grouped tens of thousands of women as the most important feminine organizations in the Republican zone. Its young organization was the Union of Young Women. In Catalonia, the Unió de Dones de Catalunya, led by Dolors Bargalló, gathered together left-wing women. The other great feminine organization was the Free Women, Mujeres Libres, of an anarchist inspiration. All these organizations were little by little leaving aside their feminist claims. The rhythm of the war, to fight against the advance of Franco's army, to struggle to stop fascism, monopolized all their efforts. The victory of the national side in the Civil War led to a counter-revolution in women's social, political, and legislative rights. All the laws granting women legal freedom passed during the Spanish Republican period were repealed during Franco's regime. The role of women wife mother was a key element in the new ideology of the National Catholicism regime. Under this regime, National Spain brought back the 1889 Civil Code, making women return to their traditional domestic roles. On May 9, 1939, numerous Republican and democratic laws, such as the laws of civil marriage and divorce, were abolished. Abortion and the use of contraceptives were forbidden. Women's legal ability was greatly restricted, and once again was subjected to the authority of the father or the husband. Divorces that took place during the Republic were now invalid, and now you were technically still married to your previous spouse. Pilar Primo de Rivera proclaimed the only mission that the mother country assigns to women is home care. This policy forced women to leave their jobs upon marrying and return to their mother or wife roles. A birth increase policy was also in effect, which benefited large families. Even if you were not married during this time, women were forbidden to have qualified jobs, including judges, diplomacy posts, and notaries. If a woman was married with a job, she would not be able to collect family subsidies or benefits. Only the woman's husband has right to receive subsidies and benefits. Spain's cultural diversity was repressed during this time. Luckily for women, flamenco dancing was promoted as a national tradition that was acceptable during this time. The feminist section of the Falange was a main organization in Franco's Spain. In December of 1934, it was created by José Antonio Primo de Rivera. Its goal was awakening Spaniards through its affiliates the conscience of what it means to be a Spaniard. The party also claimed that women had to characterize themselves as strictly feminine. Women were feminine, but they were not to be feminists. The feminist section had more than 250,000 members and concentrated on caring for the orphans, the organization of textile workshops, warehouses, washing centers for the convent's clothes, and nursery. Under control of the feminist section, there was a welfare service and a women's social service. The welfare service, directed by Mercedes Sanz Bachiller, was created to assist orphans and mothers. The social women's service was created by a decree on October 1937. It was obligatory for a married woman under the age of 35 years to carry out social service in the social section of the Falange Party. They had to serve for a period of 6 months, 6 hours a day for 6 days a week. The only except not to carrying out social services was if you were married or were attending university. The feminine section had some control over the educational system as well. Primary education teachers had to belong to the Phalangist organizations. In secondary education, it was mandatory for girls to take a class in home affairs, which shaped women into their roles as mother wives. Lastly, in university, females had to study the building of the national spirit. In Spanish, it was known as the formación del espíritu nacional. Thus, the feminine section, run by Pilar Primo de Rivera, in many ways exerted great power of Spanish women. The influence of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was the key institution of shaping women's roles in first Franco regime. Many marriages which had been made through a civil marriage during the Spanish Republic were no longer recognized. This couple had to legalize their marriage through validation by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church turned many women into essential elements in the task of re-Christianization the Spanish society. All women had to identify themselves as Catholic. Belonging to another religion or identifying oneself as an atheist was unacceptable. The high level of feminine illiteracy caught the Church's attention. In 1914, 23% of Spanish women could not read or write. Women who were incarcerated due to their involvement in the Civil War were also mandated to participate in Catholicism as part of their re-education. In fact, many women were incarcerated after the Civil War for their alleged involvement as a rape, and many were given la pena de muerte, the death penalty.
Españoles. Franco ha muerto.
Pero el luto oficial se levanta aquel día por unas horas para que el sucesor de Franco sea proclamado rey de España una vez haya cumplido lo dispuesto en la ley de sucesión del régimen.
In 1976, Adolfo Suárez is chosen as president of the government by the king. After the legalization of the political parties at the beginning of 1977, the first general elections for the Congress and Senate took place on the 15th of June in 1977. This was the first time after the dictatorship in which both men and women could vote and also be part of the political parties. As a result, women acceded to the courts, there being 21 women out of 350 in the Congress and 6 out of 248 in the Senate, some of them by royal designation. On December 15, in 1977, the Constitution is subjected to referendum in which it will be approved to enter into force in 1978. After Franco's death, the main objective of the government was the breakdown with the Francoist system, translated in the establishment of different political, economical, and social measures. Among the social measures, there will be some that will have the role of women to go to step forward. During the dictatorship, adultery and cohabitation was considered a crime punished from 6 months to 6 years in prison, and on January 18, 1978, it was decriminalized. On October of the same year, the scale of contraceptive pills is permitted, allowing women in a different way to choose about their family life. On June 22, 1981, against the church opinion, a law allowing the divorce is passed. This law entered into practice on August 10th, and this day there were 29 applications in the tribunals of Barcelona. 4 years after, in 1985, the induced abortion in 3 assumptions is decriminalized. This law will be later changed into the Ley Orgánica 2/2010 by the PSOE, party in the government, and later changed again by the PP on 2014. The progress of women's rights are not only reflected in these laws, but in their inclusion into the workplace, working in jobs previously seen as male jobs. Also, their access to university that will allow them to train themselves as professionals and live apart this role of mother and wife if they wanted to. This sexual liberation that was so important during the transition is also reflected in cinema with the appearance of a movement called El Destape. Here, female, and in less extent male, full nudity appeared on screen, mainly in comedies as in movies like Asignatura Pendiente, Los Años Desnudos, and No desearás al vecino del quinto.
las 27 mujeres que estuvimos allí, yo creo que tenemos el valor de los pioneros, que siempre son los que van por delante. A veces incluso ni siquiera saben qué es lo que van a encontrar cuando termine el camino, pero saben que hay un trabajo que hacer.